Yeah, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started very soon. We just wait for maybe an extra 3 minutes for others to join, and then we'll get started. Please do well to help me admit others as they come in, because if I'm taking the class, I may not be able to admit. Please, anyone can just help to admit any other person coming in. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right, ma'am. All right, I think we can get started because of time and because we have a lot to cover. And yes, we can start now. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, from wherever you're joining from. Welcome to the Track AI Foundation. Sorry, AI Foundation with Microsoft. I think I have a typo error there. Um, with Microsoft. My name is Olajumoke Toriola. I'm fondly called MG, and I love to be called MG. And I like used to say, MG is not Michael Jackson, but you're free to call me MG at any time. I think I'm very comfortable with that. And then taking us on this track, taking us with me on this track will be Lady Franca Ibuzo, which is also one of the mentors, and then Olive Inuyomade, who is also one of the mentors. This is an 8 weeks training, and then we'll be taking us through this journey. Hopefully, at the end of this journey, you would have been able to um, know what the Microsoft AI ecosystem is all about. You'll be able to do a mini project that you can be proud of, that you done yourself. You'll also be able to learn a bit around, not a bit really, Microsoft Foundry, which is actually the AI space for you to be able to build your agents and all of that. Also, you'll be able to learn a bit about Microsoft Copilot. And yes, I know there is a class for GitHub Copilot, but we'll touch briefly on GitHub Copilot as part of the Microsoft ecosystem. And then we would go on, go on from there. So like I said, welcome and then settle in. Is I'm glad to have you here. We're going to go on this journey together, and then this 8 weeks journey will be weeks. It's going to be lots of fun. And then please do well to pen down your question till the end of the class. I will be willing to take your questions. And then also, I would like to say it ahead of time. No question is wrong and doesn't look embarrassing. It's not embarrassing and it is not basic. Whatever you have, even though it may look or sound stupid, please do not feel pressure not to put it down. Put your question down. Ask your question in whatever way you want to ask. The only thing is that I don't know any other language other than probably English, Pidgin, and Yoruba. So if you feel free that you cannot explain it even in a very, very good English, you want to put it in Pidgin, please do feel free to do that. So, and I'm also, and if you're shy to put it, to speak up, please put it in the chat window. We'll do well to see how we can help with some of your question. Now, this class is going to be very I'm going to take the course in a very relatable way so that it relates to what you do today, and then you can find meaning into the concept of what we're going to be discussing. So I'll ask that as much as possible, please pay attention to the truth about it is that the class is quite going to be very simplified for you to be able to understand what it is like. So without much ado, I'm sure also they're going to paste in into the chat window. My fellow mentors are going to paste in the chat window the attendance. Please do well to fill in your attendance. Ahead of time in the chat window, I've also included some of the tools we use for our lab. Please do well to start installing those tools now, because like the Atom tool, it takes about 15 minutes. So but I wouldn't want us to now start installing it when we are already doing the class. Please, you can start installing now, and then ahead of the lab. And then we also will be using Microsoft Foundry, but it is not compulsory that you have an account for Microsoft Foundry for you to be able to use it. However, once you have an Azure credit, so I'm giving you the links in that window for you to be able to sign up for an Azure free credit if you do not already have. Please, you need to sign up for an Azure free credit. Just follow the prompt, sign up, and then once you have an Azure free credit with any Microsoft accounts you have, at the end of the day, we'll be able to start using the Microsoft Foundry. So we have two labs in this session today, and then we'll be able to take it. So please do all of that before we get to the lab time session. Sorry. So I'll get started now. Now, once again, I'll say good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. But before we dive in, I would like to ask you something. Very, very. You can put it in your chat window. And the question I'm going to ask is: have you ever asked your phone a question, and then you've been amazed that it actually understood you? Or maybe you have seen a news headline about a robot writing poetry, or a computer also diagnosing disease faster than a doctor. Have you ever come across such and then it's something that amazes you? Please, have you, even when you ask your phone, maybe just put it in the chat window. Tell me what your experience is like when you do so. First of all, I hope everyone can see my screen. Yeah, just want to see what we say
Yes.
here. All
Yes.
right,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, all right, great. Great, great, great. All right, someone at least answered me. All right, if you have ever experienced that, that's all AI. And today we are going to pull back the curtain on what it is really. So here's the best part. You don't need to be a data scientist or a programmer to follow along. I mean, this session is designed for curious minds, whether you're a business leader, an IT professional, a student, or someone who simply is fascinated by technology. The truth about it is that you are in the right place. So the truth, how we're going to take this course is that we'll start building a solid understanding of what the AI concept is all about, what AI can do, how it works at a high level, and then we'll get hands-on with the Azure cloud platform that runs these ideas into real practical tools that today you can use. So think of this really as your passport into the world of AI if you are new to it. Because by the end of this session, you won't just understand what AI is, you will know where to go next to start building it. And before you know it, before the 8 weeks really, I believe that some of us will be a pro in this course. So what is our agenda? Our journey today just has two big chapters, to be honest. The first chapter, we're going to answer the question that's on everyone's mind: what actually is artificial intelligence? So what we're going to do is that we're going to break it down in a way that makes sense. We're going to look at the different types of work AI can do and talk about why doing AI responsibly matters just as much as doing it well. Now, in the second chapter, we will shift gears from theory to practical. That's where we're going to do a lot of the practical work. We explore the Azure platform that makes AI accessible for everyone, and then we'll walk through how to actually get started. Now, what you're going to see is how the pieces fit together, from cloud infrastructure all the way to deploying your own first AI model. So by the time we wrap up, you will have both the conceptual map and the practical starting point you need for you to get started. So let's begin with the big picture, really, and that is introduction to AI concept. So we're going to kick off chapter 1, understanding AI the very fundamental level. The truth, like I said, I've put in the chat window some of the tools that we're going to use. Please do where to get that installed ahead of time. So before we touch any tools or platform, we need also to be able to understand some sort of a shared vocabulary, because I want us to be aware of the vocabulary we'll be using in this track. Think of it like learning the rules of a game before you play it. So once you know the rules, everything else click into place, and then that is what we're going to be looking at, the introduction to AI concept. So let's start with, what is artificial intelligence? Now, here's how I like you to think about it. Imagine you could bottle up some of the things humans are naturally great at. And those things are seeing, listening, reading, making decision, predicting what might happen next, and teach software. And then these are all things that you call cognitive abilities, or intelligent abilities that human beings can do. Now imagine that you can teach software to do those same things. That is AI in a nutshell. So it's software that imitates human capabilities, and I use the word capabilities because it is human that we know that can do what, that can see, they can listen, they can read, they can make decision, intelligent decision. Those are cognitive services, intelligent services that they can do. But right now we're saying that we're teaching software to be able to do that. That is simply what AI is all about. That is a software that imitates human capability. Now, I want us to be very clear, and I want to be very clear. AI doesn't think the way we do, because that's what some of the things that we miss out. It doesn't have feelings. AI does not have feelings. It doesn't have intuition or consciousness. Although the argument that someone would bring forward to me is that, okay, but a lot of these models, they're teaching them about social engineering. Yes, they're teaching them, but they don't have it. And the truth about it is that the difference between when you have that as an inbuilt, rather than as maybe something that you are prompted to do. So AI doesn't think the way we do. It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have intuition or consciousness. What it does have is an incredible ability to process enormous amount of data and find patterns that could take us years, to spot. That's what AI can do. AI will only have that incredible ability, and that is why they say today that the lifeblood of artificial intelligence is data. So keep it somewhere. Just keep it somewhere that you know that if you're talking about artificial intelligence, you have to have data. And so it feeds on that data, and that data is what he used to do what make intelligent decision. So if you look at the example from the slide, AI can just get my pointer. If you look at the example from the slide, AI can actually predict outcomes by learning, right, from historical data, by also forecasting sales trends or detecting fraud, which you can see. And then it can also understand language and conversation with you, which is how chatbots and virtual assistant work today. You see that also with ChatGPT. It can see and interpret messages, and you can see that even from this image over here. So think the best way for you to think about how AI works and what its capability are is how your phone recognizes faces in photos, and then it can extract what knowledge out of those photos. So here what is, and this is what is even more exciting. AI isn't a futuristic fantasy. The truth about it is that it has been around in the late 50s. But what makes it a buzz this time around is because of the ChatGPT that came out, and then the way AI is also revolutionizing businesses, educations, healthcare, and all of that. So and the pace of change is also accelerating. So you see the the transformative changes that is happening with AI. So that's one of the reasons that it's become something that everyone is paying attention to, even when it has been there in the past. And what makes it really more interesting is the generative AI feature that comes with it. So the question isn't whether AI is going to impact our world. Is the truth about it is that how are we going to harness its capability? And then I'm sure that is what every one of us are here to learn in this track for the next week. So, all right, so we have defined what AI is. It's quite very, like I said, I'm not going to be doing a lot of definition word for what some of these concepts are. I'm going to put it in such a way that you can relate with it, right? That it is relatable. You can relate with the concept around it. And so we have defined what AI is, but how does it actually work under the hood? That's the question that is on everyone's mind. And this is what this next slide that we're talking about, the key AI concept is going to unpack. So think of it as a layered cake where each layer builds on the one below it. And listen, I promise by the end you will have a crystal clear mental model of how these pieces actually fit together. So let's start at the bottom, the widest layer, which is actually what the machine learning. Now, before I start talking, I want us to take our mind back to those times that you make a sort of transfer, and then maybe when you make a sort of transfer, you go maybe from your mobile, from your bank mobile app and all of that. And when you come the next time, or even from your web browser, it tells you, do you want to make a transfer of the same amount? You get? So, or you go to your YouTube or to your Netflix and you're trying to watch a program, and then the next thing you see is that it's giving you suggestion of similar programs you watched in the past. That is what machine learning is all about. And then that is machine learning actually in action. What machine learning does is essentially the idea that you can feed a computer a ton of data, and instead of telling it exactly what to do, you let it figure out patterns on its own. You are not it looks at the pattern of how you make transfer, on what you watch on Netflix, and then it's giving you suggestion. That is what machine learning is all about. It gives you suggestion based on what it has studied ahead of time, or it's what the pattern is that it has figured out on its own. So think about also how your emails learns to filter spam. Nobody wrote a rule for every spam message, to be honest. It's not every spam message you go to your Gmail or you go to your Outlook that you have written any rule for. The system learn from millions of examples. That's what spam can look like. That is what machine learning is all about. Again, let me give you an example. Look at a product recommendation. Yeah, like I said, you want to make a transfer. It tells you you've seen a pattern of 10,000 or two of the first 2K, and then you say, oh, do you want to transfer 2K? That is machine learning for you. So all of these are what machine learning in action, and it's been around for decades, and it's proven, is reliable and absolutely everywhere. And that is the foundation of where AI begins from. So that is what the machine learning is all about. Now let's move up the ladder and look at what deep learning. Now deep learning is a specialized subset of machine learning. Now it is inspired by how our own brain works. If you know the way your brains work, if you do a little bit of biology, you will know what we call the neural networks, the layer upon how reasoning, thinking, intelligence is done in the brains a bit. So that is what deep learning is all about. Is inspired by how our brain works. So it uses artificial neural networks, really, which are layers upon layers of mathematical nodes that process information the way neurons, that is what we have in our brain, we do. So what makes it special is that it It can handle incredibly complex data that the machine learning, that is the traditional machine learning, we struggle with. And that is why it is called what, deep learning, because it also involves things like image and facial recognition, speech to text transcription, language translation, and then also autonomous driving conception. That's what you see with machine learning. So what makes it special, like I said, is that it can handle incredibly complex data that traditional machine learning struggles with. So when you unlock your phone, let's give an example. Let's make it more. Let's bring it more to home. When you unlock your phone with your face, that is actually deep learning. So can we relate to the differences? If I'm doing transfer, and I'm doing transfer, I want to watch Netflix, and it's telling me, oh, on my mobile phone, and it's giving me suggestion. That is machine learning. But if I come and say, my phone should unlock my face, that is actually what, deep learning, because we now see the image and the facial recognition, which is part of it. So, and then when you speak also to a virtual assistant like Siri, and it transcribes your word perfectly, that is actually what, deep learning. Because I want you to relate to it so that you can understand it better, instead of, I don't want you to think so much, oh, all the big concepts in artificial intelligence, you hear machine learning, you hear deep learning and all of that. That's why I am breaking it down to something you can relate with, and then with that you can understand it much better. So then, so deep learning is doing the heavy lifting, really. Then you have language translation, where you can talk to a self-driving car, and then it can actually perceive you. So you see that. Then deep learning also plays another good function when you look at medical image analysis, because now you can look at an image and you can actually detect the disease pattern and all of that. That is deep learning in action, different from machine learning. Now, at the very top of all of this is where we have now what, generative AI. So generative AI, this is the one making headlines every week. This is what make AI became the boss, and everybody is going crazy that what is this AI all about. This is the generative AI. This is the one that doesn't just analyze data or classify them. What it does is that it creates new content, and that is why it is what, generative. That is, it is generating new data, it's analyzing data, it's classifying, and it's creating new content out of it. So you give it a prompt and it writes an essay, you generate a photorealistic image, you complete your code, it can help you summarize a 50 pages report into 3 paragraphs. All of this is what is called generative AI. And what is it powered by? There are 2 key models that power this. We call it what, the large language model. So just use the word large language model. It is just like tons of languages that are written in codes, and then that generate text, and then they are reasoning. If you attend, and I know some of you, I'm seeing familiar faces from the GitHub powered class. You think about ChatGPT, you think about Claude. This is what it is all about. So this is the models that are what powering your generative AI. So you talk about the large language models, and again the diffusion models. What this does is that it creates stunning images from a simple text. So while the large language model generates text, code, and reasoning, diffusion and image models actually does what, creates the model. So if you're looking, anytime you think about generative AI, just think about these 2 things are what is driving generative AI. Do you get? And then the AI chatbots and the co-pilot you are hearing about also are examples of these diffusion and image models. So that's generative AI in action. And then these are the things that you need to know. That notice how each layer builds on on one another. The machine learning is the foundation now, but it's not as complex as the deep learning, because with machine learning, all you can just do is that just learn from your data, give you summary on the patterns from how it works, and then with deep learning you have more complex on it, and then generative AI now builds on it. So that is, in a nutshell, is what the key AI concepts are. And then I just want us to have that as as a background for us to be able to understand. Now, these are some essential terminology that you will also need to learn. Remember, right now we talk about natural language processing. Large language models. Now we're going to be looking at some concepts around natural language processes. So now that we have seen how machine learning, deep learning, and generative AI stack on top of each other, let's zoom out and look at the broader vocabulary that you will encounter in almost every AI conversation that you are going to be having. So one of the things I want you to do is that think of this slide as just think of this slide I'm showing you right now as your cheat sheet. These 6 essential terms is what will come up in every strategic meeting, in every in every pitch, or in any technical discussion where AI is being talked about. The reason why I want you to keep this up, keep it in a safe place like a cheat sheet, is because when you know what these are, it will help you cut through a lot of the jargons, and then you will be able to also ask more intelligent questions as you take up this journey around AI. So in starting, let's start with natural language, really, or NLP, that it is called, natural language processing. So this is the field that teaches machine to do what? To understand, to interpret, and generate human language. So just think of it the same way that I am asking a machine, the same way how we converse with you, and in a natural language. That's why it is called natural language processing. So it means that if I decide to converse with a machine in English language, you will understand what I'm saying. If I decide to speak to a machine in Spain, or in Spanish language, or in French language, it will also understand what I'm saying. That is why it is called natural language. That is, it teaches the machines to understand and interpret our human language the way it is. So when you look, how does this play? So let us relate it to our everyday life. When you take your phone, and then your phone is helping you to auto-complete a sentence, that is actually natural language processing in place. When a customer service bot understands your question, and then maybe an app that you go to visit, maybe you want to make you want to buy something online to eat, and is able to translate a menu in real time for you, that is natural language at work. So, and it is one of the oldest and most commercially mature branches of AI. What it does is that it underpins virtually every text and voice-based AI experience you can actually encounter every day. And you can see the sentiment analysis that goes to translation, to text summarization, and voice assistant. That's what natural language processing is all about. Just think about it as a machine that understands how you speak, what your language is. That's what the concept is all about. Next, let's talk about computer vision. So if NLP is about language, really, then computer vision is about sight. Remember that when we started, we talked about AI being artificial intelligence, meaning that you can teach a machine to simulate human capabilities. So what are the human capabilities? One, we talk about the natural language processing, which means you can talk, you can text, you can speech, right? Now we come to computer vision, because humans can do or can see. So computer vision is all about sight. It gives machine the ability to process what? images and video and extract meaningful information from it. So think about facial recognition, like I used the example before, unlocking your phone, and then also look at things that they do around radiology AI. I mean, spotting tumors in X-ray, or even you can. I don't know whether some of you have come up around videos where you see factory camera catching defective products on an assembly line and all of that. So computer vision is what makes autonomous vehicle also possible. So take that as an example. So what a car literally sees, the car literally sees the road, it sees the pedestrian, it sees the traffic sign through deep learning powered visual models, and then he can now do what? He can drive on his own. So you see that part of saying, oh, autonomous vehicle. I'll tell you a funny this thing. Last year when I was in Ignite, when we ordered a ride, and then they told me, and then the ride came, and then it was a driverless car, and then I preach AI a lot. I was asked to enter. I said no. All of them were making fun of me. I said no, I'm not going to enter. I didn't enter the car, but the truth about it is that it seems too real to be true. And then, so these are at the back end, computer vision is actually what makes autonomous vehicle possible. So which means that the car can actually do what? Self-drive itself and all of that. And then we have what is called reinforcement learning. This one is a bit different from the others. So instead of learning from labeled data, the traditional way that machine learning does, reinforcement learning actually learns by doing. So you have an agent takes an action in an environment, it gets reward. All right, so I was in reinforcement learning, and then, like I said, is a bit different from the NLP and then the computer vision, because instead of learning from labeled data, like the way the traditional machine learning does, reinforcement learning actually learns by doing. So this is what you tell us: an agent takes an action in environments, and then and he gradually figures out the best strategy. So I'll give an example. A lot of time when we think that when ChatGPT came out, everybody was excited and said, oh, ChatGPT, they make it very open. And then the enormous data, the interaction we had with ChatGPT is actually what it was using to learn and to train itself. Every conversation that every one of us were having, that we're all excited that, I told ChatGPT to do this one and he bring it out and all of that, that everybody was getting excited. Actually, it was a very smart move by Anthropic. What they did was that they brought all of you together, they brought all of us together, allow our data to come in by our own volition. We were not forced, there was no coercing. We voluntarily gave them our information, and then we started chatting and all of that. So the AI started learning with it. And then when it gives the wrong information, when you give it is wrong, it takes that as a correction and does what? The next time he does what? He figures out the right thing to say, and then the best strategy for you to answer, and then he generates a new content. That is all reinforcement learning works, really. So you some of the areas you use this are places like for supply chain optimization, for things like robotic AI. If you look at the robotic AI, this is where it actually plays very well. In even games, this is where it plays. However, like I used to tell people, we are part of what generative AI also made use of really was the reinforcement learning, because you have human feedback, and then the human feedback is the technique to use to align the large language models like what ChatGPT with human experiences do. So reinforcement learning is now quickly empowering the generative AI revolution. It is moving to the it is helping it to quickly understand the pattern how people ask questions. So if I ask a question today, I say, what is microbiology? And then the AI replied me, and I said, oh, give me more concepts around it. And I said, oh, that is wrong. It learns from it. And then somebody else comes and say, oh, what is microbiology? What it has learned from me, actually we use it to give a better result to the other person. And sometimes when you see it, you say, oh, ChatGPT gave you a better result more than me. It is actually reinforcement learning that is in play. So that's just another example. Another thing I want you to learn is also what the transfer learning. So it's probably is probably the most important practical concept of this slide. Please take note of it, because this is where ChatGPT plays in very well, because it is the reasoning AI. Why we call it transfer learning is actually because it is the reasoning AI. It is the reason AI has also become accessible to organizations that don't have billions of dollars and the massive data center for them to be able to even build any AI model. So the idea is just simple, but it's powerful. Take a model that has already been trained on a huge general purpose data center. Like I said, AI feeds on data. They are the lifeblood of data. I mean, lifeblood of AI is data. Take that as a knowing. So what happens is that AI feeds on, I mean, feeds on trained general purpose data set, just like I made mention of what ChatGPT is there. Then it refined it, it fine-tuned it into something smaller, domain specific data. So instead of you training a model from scratch, that's why you see today you can see a Claude model that you can quickly use to build an app. You can see ChatGPT model that you can quickly use to build an app. You can see a Gemini model that you can quickly use to build that. So that is what transfer learning is all about. So what it does is that it requires enormous compute and data. So it piggyback on the knowledge that is already embedded in a pre-trained model, like what I've just said. It piggybacks on that embedded pre-trained model, on the knowledge that is already embedded in a pre-trained model like your ChatGPT, and then makes it very easy for you to quickly build something from scratch. So you see when people say, oh, it only takes me like 30 minutes to build a working app, that is transfer learning that is working, because you are making use of a fine-tuned pre-trained model already, and then it allows you to build something. So this is why companies today can decide to say, oh, they want to get rid of staff and say, oh, when AI can do it for me. Please, can somebody mute who is talking there so that it doesn't distract me? Hello, please, can you let me mute that person, please?
Okay.
All right, thank you. So this is how companies build custom classifier, domain specific chatbot, and then you have that. So let's move on to RAG, where we talk about retriever augmented generation. And what RAG is actually is dominating enterprise right now. AI conversation is dominating it right now. When you hear anybody they talk about, yo, it's RAG, is RAG, is RAG. But yes, the problem is solved. It's a large language model that is incredibly powerful, but they only know what is in their training data. So what this does is that it doesn't include your company's internal documents, but you can only just have it in such a way that it's up to, I mean, it is up to date, which is, so it's up to date, and then it does not also rely only on, it does not only rely only on your company's internal document. You can include any document you train it on, whether it is external document or whether it is internal document. That is what it uses. So you will see Copilot today. When you use Copilot, and then Copilot is telling you that, oh, pick from work or pick from web. That is what RAG is actually doing. So it fizzes this by a retriever step before generation. So the system first does, that's why they call it what, retriever augmented generation. So what the system first does is that it searches your knowledge base. So if I say my knowledge base is what, my internal documents or my database or my wikis, it look for all my wikis. You look for those things I'm trying to search for. It looks for it in that internal this thing and then gives me the most relevant information. And then it actually fits that context into a large language model. So it generates answer that is grounded in my actual data that I'm supplying. Maybe in the future I now decide to say, oh, what I want, the result I want, I don't want you to search just my internal documents. Go to the web also. It also dramatically do that and then brings the result for me. So one of the good things about RAG it does, it reduces hallucination. You know what we say that AI hallucinates, because AI can give you a very wrong this and it still maintains that it is the right output is give you. So that's what hallucination is. So what RAG does is that it helps you to reduce hallucination and makes AI output trustworthy enough for you to be able to trust. So one of the use cases is when you are building an enterprise Q&A bot. So let's assume you have new hire in your organization today and you have internal documents maybe on your SharePoint or probably maybe on your intranet portal, and the questions around onboarding, question around leave management. You can actually use this concept of RAG to train your Q&A bots for you to be able to say, if anybody has anything around leave request, go into these internal documents in this so knowledge base and then give them information about it. If people wants to have more ask more information around the labor law in Nigeria, look for these documents. You can give them in this internal document. However, if they want maybe external resources, go to the web and bring it. So it reduces those hallucination for you. So I've just given you an example of what RAG can do. And then finally, we cannot talk about AI without talking about how to use it responsibly. It isn't a technology. Responsible AI is not a technology. It is a mindset, and it is a set of practices that you as an AI engineer that you are becoming should keep at the back of your mind in using AI. So as AI becomes more powerful and more embedded in high-stake decisions that we'll be making, things like hiring, lending, healthcare, criminal justice, we have to make sure that this system actually operates fairly, transparently, and accountable. So this is where responsible AI covers things like bias, detection, explainability, that is, you can understand why the model made that decision. It is privacy by design, and then governance framework. So this is why it is today, it is a big thing that everyone should learn responsible AI. In fact, some people are making a career out of responsible AI, because if you know how to use it very well, you can go into an organization and say you can apply as a responsible AI engineer, which is going to, consultant, that is going to help them build a framework on how to build artificial intelligence, or even how to use it in a responsible manner, which means you're going to do your AI policy and all of that. So somebody can take a course out of, a career out of it. So this is all the systems that will show up again in any conversation around AI. And then I hope that with the explanation of what I've given and how you can relate to it, you can understand where each of them can be used. Now, moving on, we talk about AI capabilities. Now that we know what AI is, let's talk about what it can actually do. Think of AI as software that imitates human capability. And on this slide, we're looking at the core technical capabilities that makes that possible. So these are the building blocks, right? These are the building blocks, the senses and the skills that AI uses to interact with the world. So let's walk through each of them. Learning, machine learning, we already talked about it, that machine learning is the foundation. I'm just repeating that. The machine learning is the foundation of AI, and it's how AI learn from data to make predictions and decisions without being explicitly programmed for every scenario, and is the engine under the hood of most AI applications. So just bear it. When you talk about the lifeblood of AI, we say it is data, but when we talk about the engine of how AI runs, we say it is machine learning. So just have that at the back of your mind. Then text and language processing is what powers your virtual assistant, translation services, sentiment analysis tools, and all of that. Then you have computer speech, we will talk about. We already talked about which helps your machine to listen to you and talk back. That's your voice activated devices, your call center automation right there. Then you talk about computer vision, which is the ability to see and interpret images, and then videos. So from quality control on a factory floor to something analyzing a medical scan, this is where computer vision talks about. And then we talk about information extraction. So give an example that every time an invoice is submitted, I want to take key notes of the things that are in the invoice. This is where information extraction comes in. It puts structured knowledge out of unstructured data, like reading thousands of contracts really or invoices and pulling out the key terms automatically. That is what information extraction it is. So let's assume that when you're writing an exam, okay, let's take it. How many of you have written a Microsoft exam? They ask you, maybe you are writing an exam online, they ask you to upload a form of identity. Now that form of identity you're uploading is actually what they're trying to do is information extraction. That's the technique they're trying to use there. They're trying to extract every information, probably around your name, your date of birth, whether it corresponds with what you have also entered. And then they do some sort of image scanning also to see the image that is on that identity document that you provided. And then when they ask you to take a picture, they do a comparison. So you can see how AI is already working, that a lot of us may not even know that that's what is happening at the background. Now finally, we have generative AI and agents. Now this is the newest frontier. This is what is, you don't even now hear of AI again. We are hearing agentic AI. Everybody is going, what is agentic AI? Now we talk about AI before, now we're talking about agentic AI. We'll come to that. So this is AI that doesn't just analyze, it creates, it writes, it designs, it codes, and at the same time, and with agents, it can even take actions on your behalf. So this is the area that is generating the most excitement and transformation right now. So that is what generative AI and agents are. So each of these capabilities, like I said, open up the world of possibility, and Azure has specific services that is designed for every single one of them. And at the end of the day, we're going to look at all of these and we're going to make sense out of it. So moving on, let's just talk about the types of AI workloads. When we talk about AI, there are types of workloads. So we know that today AI is narrow, but it's built for specific jobs. But what kind of jobs exactly? That's what comes to our mind. So that's what this slide is all about. Think of it as a menu of the 4 main things AI gets hired to do in the real world. Do you get? And I promise you, once you see these categories, you will start spotting them everywhere. In apps, in apps that you use, in services that you rely on, even in the way your favorite website seems to know what you want. So you know what the AI is trying to do. So let's start in the top left, which is the word, the prediction. This is the crystal ball of AI. Right? The question it answers is what will happen next. So you see prediction models, they look at the mountains of historical data, past sales numbers, weather patterns, machine sensors log as an example, and they find trends humans will never spot on their own. And so that is why they are called what? Predictions, AI workloads. And they do what? They find patterns. They answer the question, or the question it answers is what will happen next. That is why it is called prediction. Now moving on, and then once they answer the question, they also do what? They project those patterns forward, and then they are able to do some sort of a forecast on it. Now you have classification. So the prediction answer what will happen does this belong to. So it's like having a super fast librarian, and then we can sort millions of items into the right bucket in a second. So your email inbox uses this every day, spam or not spam. That is what the classification is. If it is spam, it goes to spam or junk mail. If it is not spam, it goes to your inbox. That is AI in action. And then your email uses that. So a doctor that is also reviewing a medical scan and wondering whether a growth is malignant or it is benign and all of that, that is what AI is. That is the classification that is using there. And then a bank also that is classifying whether is this a fraudulent transaction in a real time or it is not. That is classification that is doing that. Then we come to the bottom, which is what? Recommendation. And this one, it's close to home for all of us. Every time a streaming service queues up, your less things, I made an example of it, like saying that when you go to your YouTube or when you go to your Netflix, it gives you a recommendation and say, oh, this is the next video, or it goes next, or it learns the pattern of how you watch, and then it automatically flips into that same pattern of what you've been watching. That is what recommendation does there. So that's an example. And finally, I have what? The conversational AI. And the conversational AI, this is the one that's been making the biggest landline, like I said, is the one that is about machine that can talk to us, not just recognize keywords. I got my sister got a fridge from that came in from what they call it the other day, from China, and then it has all of these China symbols on it. I mean, it has all these symbols of freezing, and we couldn't understand how to operate it. So all of a sudden, I just thought to myself, I said, why am I wasting time now? Oh, Copilot. And I put Copilot. I said, I'm going to show you some pictures. And we started conversing. I said, I'm going to show you some videos. I'm going to put my video on right now. And they're going to tell me what these signs represent in terms of freezing, cooling, and all of that. And they recommend the next. And that is how something that we've been disturbing ourselves over 30 minutes or 1 hour trying to say, oh, this thing is not cooling. We just switched to Copilot to solve it in less than 5 minutes. And then the next thing started cooling. And my sister was saying, just take this thing out of this place. I don't want anything to study my husband. We're just laughing, you get. So this is what it is all about. It's human-like language. It's going to help you. It's conversational. They're like chatbots and all of that. And it's going to help you. And then you see even it in actions where you say it should help you to draft emails and summarize meeting and all of that. You see customer service chatbots today that you're using, and then it's going to resolve issues without a human agent and all of that. That is conversational AI. So I hope that works. Now, the big question a lot of us have been asking is that what's the difference between AI? What's the difference between automation and data science? A lot of us miss it up, but I'm going to bring light. So these are concepts that I want us to have, and then we'll be able to go further. Now, I want you to, you have probably heard the terms AI, automation, and data science, and they actually use them interchangeably, sometimes in the same meeting, sometimes in the same sentence, but they're actually three different things. And understanding the differences will save you a lot of confusion down the road. So let's start with automation. So the simplest of the three, which is automation. And what does automation do? So think about what happens when you set up an out of office reply in your email. That's automation. That's the simplest I can come to. So what does it do? It follows a rule you defined. You define the rule and say, when I'm out of office from so day to this, when anybody send me a mail, send them this out of office. That is automation in action. It just does exactly what it was told to do every single time. So it is powerful for repetitive, predictive tasks, and but it has a ceiling. The moment something unexpectedly happens, automation doesn't know what to do. So that is it. So that is the drawback with it. Because it's a predefined rule, if anything altered any portion of those predefined rules that you've written, automation just blacks out. It doesn't know what else to do. That's why you will say, oh, you hear something and say, oh, the flow does not work. The flow did not trigger. It did, that is because it was automation. You wrote a predefined rule for it. So when it is out of shape, it doesn't follow it. Now let's think about data science. Now data science sits in a different corner really. A data scientist's job, like anybody will look at, is to look at massive amounts of data. His job is to find patterns in that data. If you attend the fabric class, I'm sure Lady Franca will do more justice to what I'm saying, and then you understand where they come in. So if you look at they find patterns, they test hypotheses, they extract insights that help organization make better and informed decision. So when you think about data science, think about it like a detective work. So you are sifting through evidences, you are building models and drawing conclusion. So data science give you the why and what might happen next. That's why data science, we call it, we can say it is predictive, it is descriptive and all of that. And then there is artificial intelligence. Now we've talked about data science. Now let's talk about, this is where things rather now get very exciting, because AI goes beyond both, it goes beyond these two. What AI does is that it can learn from experience, adapt to new situation, understand language, recognize images and make complex decisions. It doesn't just follow rules like automation does. It can figure out new rules based on the pattern it has learned from the automation, right? It doesn't just analyze data like data science does. It can act on those insights in a real time. So you see the difference. Now, artificial intelligence now makes the job of these two, this automation. You can hear people say I'm an automation engineer, or maybe power platform engineer. I write automation and all of that because I do power platform. So that's automation. Now you can hear data scientists say, I bring insight, I bring informed decision for your data, and make your data tell you a story, and then make your data. But artificial intelligence now combines these two and then now uses. So here's the beautiful part. So if you look at, the beautiful part is that they are all collaborators at the end of the day. So where AI meets automation, what gets done when AI meets automation? You get intelligent automation. So automation does not become intelligent until AI meets it. And that is why you hear the word today that artificial intelligence, which is agentic AI, is actually what? Intelligent in automation, which is what you hear autonomous agents. Autonomous, because it's deriving the word from what? Automation, but yet the beauty to it is that it is not an intelligent automation. It is not following a predefined rule. That's the difference. So when AI meets automation, you get intelligent automation. You can hear the words of like I said, autonomous AI, agentic AI. That's why they said agentic AI, right? They call it agentic AI because it's autonomous in nature. So you think of this customer service system that doesn't just route calls, but they actually understands and resolve issue. Automation will allow a customer service system to just route the calls. If a call calls on, say, PC is bad, routes to this engineer. That's what automation will do. But with artificial intelligence that makes it now intelligent, it will do, it will take a pause and say, let me understand what the problem is. And instead of routing this call, I will also resolve it and give you guidelines on how you can resolve it, or even take over your PC to resolve it itself. Do you see the difference? So, because a lot of people have mixed up that AI, agentic AI is automation, but there is a distinction, is actually what? An intelligent automation. So you need to understand. That's why people will tell you that agentic AI is not automation. They will tell you that it is autonomous, and all of those terminologies get people confused all the time, and they say, what does this mean? What does this mean? So now that is what artificial intelligence does when it meets automation. Now when AI meets data science, you get what? Machine learning, right? algorithms that learn from data and get smarter over time. So where automation meets data science, you get what? Automated analytics. You can see the way all of them are collaborated. So when automation meets data science, you get what? Automated analytics. When artificial intelligence meets data science, you get machine learning. When artificial intelligence meets automation, you get intelligent automation. Right? So when all these three comes together, they act actually as words, as collaborator, and that is what we mean as the modern intelligent technology stack, where data fuels insight, insight drives intelligent decision, and those decisions get automatically executed at scale, which is the future that artificial intelligence is actually building right now. So I hope this makes a lot of sense to us. So anytime you hear again and they say, what's the difference between AI, automation, and data science, you'll be able to answer. Now, moving on before we go to our text, because we'll soon be going to our lab session right now. I want us to look at narrow AI versus general AI. Now, I want to introduce a distinction that is really important for understanding where AI is today and where it is headed. Today, we are here in narrow AI. That is why we call it ANI. The future, which is theoretical future because it is not practical, it is not even something that it is in view, is what we call general AI. Please don't mix up general AI. Don't confuse it with generative AI. I will touch on both of them in a bit. Now, when we talk about AI, we are usually imagining one or two different things, and then we also conflate it or confuse it. And then there are a lot of unrealistic expectation when it comes to what AI. So we have narrow AI, which is called artificial narrow intelligence, or AIN for acronym. This is where AI system exists today. So your voice assistant is an example. An algorithms that recommends what you can watch is an example. A fraud detection system at your back is also an example. So each of these systems is brilliantly good at one specific thing. And that is why it's called what? Narrow AI. Because they are only good at one specific thing. And then they are completely helpless at anything else. Do you get? So a great way for you to think about this is imagine a world-class chess AI. It can beat any human grandmaster on the planet, but ask it to do a tic-tac-toe. And it has no idea what you are talking about. It can't even recognize that tic-tac-toe is also a game. Do you get? So that's how narrow it is. It is only trained for one purpose, and it excels very well for that purpose. But it cannot transform. How will I put it? It cannot transfer what it knows to anything else. That is why it's called narrow AI, and that is our reality today. Now, on the far side of this spectrum sits what is called general AI, that is artificial general intelligence, or AGI. So this is the AI of the science fiction movies, those movies that we see. Although the argument has been that it is here, but a lot of school of thought say it is not, because it is the AI is a system that can think, reason, and learn across any domain, just like humans. That is, it could write a poem, diagnose a patient, design a building, and that is why it is very confusing. You will say, if you say it can do this, why are you now saying it is not Gen AI? Is Gen AI, generative AI, not the same thing as general AI? No. But because the big deal about it is that it does not, without being specifically trained. Generative AI trained on each of these models for you to be able to, because it uses data set to train on each of these models for you to be able to respond to you. What general AI does is that's why they call it is a theoretical future, is a fiction, is a science fiction, because it means that the AI can do all of these things, but it does not necessarily need to be trained for any of those tasks, which is not possible. because with even generative AI, you train it to use it to give you the result. It trains on your data. So that's why it is not the same as generative AI. So this is the critical takeaway. General AI does not exist today. It's a theoretical concept, a North Star for researcher. They're still researching on it, but we haven't achieved it yet. Some expert believes that we are decades away. Other things it may never be fully realized. What matters for you as someone learning to work with AI is knowing that every AI tool and services you encounter in Azure and everything else is narrow AI. And that's not a limitation, it's actually what makes it practical. Because narrow AI is focused, is reliable, is deployable, and it's solving real problem in real business right now. So you see the example. And then one quick important clarification, like I said, is that um people, like I said, people often confuse general AI with generative AI. They sound almost identical, but they are completely different things. Generative AI is what powers tools like your chatbot, your chat GPT, your image generator, and all of that. But general AI, on the other hand, is a system that can think, reason, and learn across any domain like a human, and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
simply doesn't exist yet. So just remember all of that. Now, before we move finally to our labs, we're going to be thinking about principle of responsible AI. Now, here's something I really feel you should know. I mean, having a powerful AI is great, but having responsible AI is more important. It's actually very essential because with great capability comes great responsibility. You know that saying. And the decision we make about how AI is built and deployed affect real people's life. So now the sixth principle that guides responsible AI is one: fairness. Fairness means that AI system learns from data, and if that data has become historically biased, the AI will learn those biases too. So fairness means actively working to detect and mitigate that. So AI treats all people equally. Then we talk about reliability and safety. Means that AI systems should work what correctly and consistently, even in unexpected situation. You wouldn't want a self-driving car that was great 99% of the time, but fails catastrophically in rain. Right. So I'll go back to my story last year. So when they asked me to enter the driverless car, I told them, no, I'm not going to enter. So by the time a human driver car came and I entered, so I was not asking questions. I was saying, okay, I was asking the driver, that was what's the experience like with this driverless cars in here? And then he said, oh, it's a lot better than that when they first came in, that it was causing a lot of chaos, that maybe something goes on in the algorithm and then they don't know where to go, and then you will just find a lot of them piled up in one corner, and then was causing a lot of chaos. So I was not telling the other guy in the car with me. I said, so if it happened that we're leaving just around 9 or 10 a.m. and we'll find that he does not know where to go, he gets to go and land me in a forest that I do not know what happened. So that's when, it was just a joke, but then this is one of the things that AI should be able to take. It has to be reliable, and you have to feel very safe about it. And that's why you now see self-driving car now that works at 99% of the time, and then they are actually also they feel during rainy season. You see all of those kind of things. So these are things that you can improve with AI. Then you have privacy and security, and it's about protecting the data that AI uses and the people that the data represents. So AI often needs a lot of data to work well, but that doesn't mean we get to ignore people's rights to privacy. In fact, one of the principles you use when you have AI treating is to redact those data, which means you hide the information of those human beings, that so that AI does not see those information. That's the privacy. And then when you're even displaying it, those data are redacted. So another thing is inclusiveness. which means designing AI for everyone, not just the majority, which means that even people with a form of disability can also use AI. Even people with language proficiency, they can use AI. Any form of disability or background, they can actually use AI. Even people that do not understand English or do not understand the language, they can use AI. Then you have transparency, which means that people should be able to understand how AI makes a decision. AI should not just make a decision. In fact, if you see sometimes when I interact with the models in my VS code when I'm doing, you will think that I'm talking because I treat them more like my developers and I'm asking them question or what to do. And when they tell me the model, I say, no, no, hold on. Not too fast. Why are we going through this route? And then you find that some of them they will just say, "Oh, my bad. Actually, that was wrong. You were right to call it out." So sometimes you AI needs to be transparent. You need to question it a lot of times. So I'm going to be taking the class on prompt engineering. Hopefully, next week. Oh, sugar, I've forgotten something. Okay, in GitHub. But one of the things is that you will learn is how to make AI very transparent. And then the last is accountability. There is always human who owns the outcomes of an AI. You can delegate tasks to AI, but you can't delegate responsibility. And that is the fact, that is the mistake a lot of us are making. We give AI the work to do and then we pull back and say, oh, so when things goes wrong, we're saying who should be blamed, AI or the human. Actually, it's AI, it's human that should be blamed because you can only delegate a task to AI. Treat AI as an employee. How you delegate a tax to any of your employee, but who is responsible? You, the boss, is the one that is responsible. So they are not just nice ideas, they are embedded into how AI platform and services are designed and built. So I want you to keep this principle in mind as we move forward. So before I go on, any question as we move on to our lab right now? Any questions so far? All right. So do we, how many of,
I
okay,
have a question.
yes, go on, Precious.
Yeah, thank you so much so far. I've just been having epileptic network. I don't know why, so I just got caught up. But I'm glad that the recording will be available on YouTube, so I will do justice to myself. So my question, I dropped it on the chat, is that is generative AI now different from narrow AI?
So yes, I would.
Okay.
It's not. So the no, no. Let me rephrase my. It's not. It is what we have today. So it's part of it.
Okay.
It's part of it. So generative AI is part of it because um you trained your data to be able to respond in the way generative AI is talking. The only difference is that it is generating new content. Now, narrow AI, generative AI is also embedded in narrow AI. It's not the same thing. So it's not the same thing as general AI. The only thing is that when the distinction we're trying to make is that when people ask for when people hear general AI and then they said general AI is not available today, then the question that comes to mind is what is generative AI, which you have rightly said is actually part of narrow AI.
Mm.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, yes, it does. Because it was a bit confusing that I was like, okay, generative AI, narrow AI. Yeah, I get it. It's clearer now. Thank you so much.
Yes. Yes, narrow AI is what we have today. Yeah. Okay. So with the razor band, how many of us has actually installed, because I left in the chat window the instruction for us to be able to install our um the very first the lab we're going to be doing. How many of us with the razor band? Um if you have you if you just you have the Anton for you to install. How many of us have done that, please? It's just a browser. It only takes like 15 minutes for you to load on your browser. So if you have done it, look at the instruction for number one where you install the atom. This is a lab. We're just going to text and give it some instruction and see how it's going to work. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then move to the lab and then let's see. Um, I'm gonna move them. Just 1 minute, please. In the meantime, please, how many of us have done it already? How many of us have that already installed?
MJ, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Okay, sorry, I was not part of this class. I actually picked one. I want to change to this one. So I'm not in the group where you posted it.
No, it's not. It's in the chat window of this. It's in the chat window.
Oh,
I pasted it in the chat window of what we're supposed to install. I'm actually looking for the one
oh,
I've opened, even me myself.
MJ, would
Uh,
you
uh,
repost
uh,
it for those that came in late? Can you repost this, please? Okay.
all right, I'll do that just now.
Thank you.
I wish this is a feedback that we can give Microsoft to repost a link. I mean, to repost a message instead of having to copy it again. So please, that's it there. That's the link. All you need is that you need a 64-bit CPU. Your machine should be 64-bit capable. I'm sure that's a lot of us. And then if you have a memory of 8 gig plus is enough for it to. I had my own started yesterday. I don't know. I think because of my internet, it's disconnected again. Can you all see it? Can you see the link right now?
yes, we can.
Just click on it. Okay. Then the other one also, I also left a I think that one I should copy that out. It's quite very important for us to also have our AI Foundry ready also, so we can do both together. I think my disconnect. When I disconnected the last time with my. So why is still loading? Maybe I should just quickly finish up the class, but because it will take a little bit of time for some of us to get that also installed, and I'm also in the same shoe with you all right now. I think what I would love to do right now is to put this question and let us quickly see how many of us can answer the question. Let's see. I'm going to quickly ask this question and yeah, our thoughts on it. So, if I can have the poll, I want to believe everybody will see this question. Okay, so let's attempt this quiz and then let me get your answers. What happened just now? Yes. So the question is, what is the most accurate description of generative AI? So A, generative AI uses language model to create original content in response to a prompt. So let's get your answers, everyone. It's only good that is in this class.
MJ, you're not sharing your screen, are you?
No, I'm not sharing my screen. It's in the chat window. And so I want people to respond to it. So we'll go my the only one in the class. All right, that's great. We all got it. That's great. That's great. That's great. So the next question is I'm going to ask is very great. So this is the next question. What is an AI agent? All right, great. Great. Yeah, so far, I have very brilliant students. All right, great. So my Alton is still taking so much time too. So let me just quickly finish the other parts of the class and then we can now take the lab together so that we don't waste so much time waiting for this. I'm sure some of us are also the Atom agents or the Atom AI assistant also is taking time to load for some of us because we're supposed to have installed it before time. I think when I lost the connection is when mine got disconnected. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen back, and then we're going to have to go on with some of the class, and that is that chapter 2. We only have just few slides remaining there, so it's important now that I take it, and then we can take the other. Yeah, right, great. So the other chapter of the class is actually getting started with what with AI. Please confirm you can see my screen.
Yes,
Can
okay.
we, yes, okay. So this is the chapter 2 of this class for today. And then while we have built a solid foundation on of AI concept, it is now time to see where the rubber meets the road, really. So we're going to explore how Azure, the cloud platform, makes it possible for you to go from AI theory to AI reality. So if chapter 1 that we've been discussing is about understanding the what and why of AI, this chapter 2 is about how and where AI actually works. So this is what we're going. So for some of us, if you I will share this link with us, but if you can click on it, you can actually use this to gain deeper self-space knowledge into the module for your own self, but I'll share it in the chat window by the time we finish. Now let's talk about Microsoft Azure starting. Now, before we jump into AI specific services, let's make sure we are all on the same page about Azure itself, because a lot of time people mix up Azure. In fact, I've seen people mix up Azure and confuse it to an identity provider, even when an identity provider, which is a Microsoft Entra ID, is a service within Azure. So when you get people, some people will even call Azure that, oh, I've created my accounts in Azure, or I have my users are in Azure. That's Azure is a cloud platform, just like the same way you have AWS as you have Google platform. That's what Azure is. It is not an identity provider. I just want to leave that background for us to understand first. So think of Azure as a massive digital toolbox in the cloud. Instead of buying and maintaining your own servers, storage, networking equipment, you rent exactly what you need. That's what Azure is. And then it's like the difference between building your own power plant versus simply plugging into the electrical grid in Nigeria. Although those ones fails us all the time. But if you are in a system that works very well, instead of you right now, what we are doing, building your own electrical grid, you plug into building your own power plant, you plug into the electrical grid that is supplied by the state or by the nation or the vicinity or the country. So Azure is organized in a very logical way like that. And then understanding its hierarchy is key. So at the top, you have what is referred to as what? A tenant. You have what is referred to a tenant, and what this tenant does is that it defines an organizational security boundary. This is your organization security boundary. It's like the front door to your building. And then what secures this, that's why I said a lot of people mix it up and call what secures this is what is referred to what your identity provider, which is what the Microsoft Entra ID. So you have the tenants, and then your security door, which is guiding your door, is actually what your Microsoft Entra ID. So anybody that is not a member of your house, so it's like you have a big compound. Think about it like you have a big compound. Maybe let's say 1004. We all can relate with 1004 in the VI. You have different blocks of flats there, and you have different tenants in that space. Everybody is a tenant in that same big compound that is called 1004. Now, for each tenant, they have their own specific word people, occupants in that, or residents in each of the flats. So you look at tenancy and then flats concept, which means we have a very big compound that all of us share. But yet I have my own privacy in my own flat, which is my tenant. And then the only people that can come into my tenant are people that exist as residents in my tenant. And what guides them is that they will have a specific key that they can use to unlock my what? The front door to my flat and enter it. And that specific key is what we refer to as what? Microsoft Entra ID, which gives you access to say, well, this is the person that has the right to access that tenant. So you understand that. Now, so the Microsoft Entra ID handles who you are and what you're allowed to do inside the tenant. Now, inside the tenant, you have what is called what? A subscription, right? So within a tenant, subscription provides billing boundaries. Think of them as different credit cards for different departments or projects. So within each subscription, you now create what is referred to as what? Resource groups. So you can see the hierarchy. From a tenant, you have a subscription. From the subscription, you have a what? A resource group. So your resource group are like your folder. Do you get? You have folders, is like you have folders that you organize related to services that you want to keep together. So I can create a resource group and say, oh, this resource group, I want it to have SQL inside. I want it to have I want it to have probably maybe my Microsoft Foundry inside it. I want it to have like my compute service. I can create inside this subscription. I can have many resource group. So maybe resource group per I can create a resource group for similar services I want to keep together and give people inside my tenants access to each of the resource group, either as a owner or as a contributor or any other right I want them to have. So I can create resource group. Now within the resource group again, right? So within the resource group, that is where you have what is called the resources. And these resources are what I mentioned as what infrastructure and application services. They are the building block of the application. So they include things like what, like I said, your SQL services, that is a resource, or your Microsoft Foundry is also a comprehensive set of services for apps and agents. So that's what you have. So look at, this is for what your Azure platform is a cloud platform. And then at the cloud platform, you have what is called the tenants, and then inside the tenants is actually guided. It's like your tenant is a security boundary, is actually guided by Microsoft Entra ID, which handles all the identities, all the residents that should be in that tenant. And then inside that tenant, you have a subscription, like I said, and that subscription apps allows you to it helps you to provide billing boundaries. It's your billing boundary. So when you hear what is your security boundary in Azure, is your tenant. What is your billing boundary in Azure? It is your subscription. Then inside the subscription, you have the resource group, and inside this resource group, you have resources that you can now use. So resource group is just like me saying I create a folder and say, oh, this folder, everything that has to do with IT is in this folder. Everything that has to do with sales is in this folder. So that's just what your resource group is. And then you can have the different resources in each of it. Yeah. So I think that is clear enough. Then that's what the Microsoft. So inside now that we've arrived, we'll have an understanding of what the Azure platform is, which is a cloud platform. Now let's talk about Microsoft Foundry, which is what we are going to be doing a lot of our works with. So if Azure is the toolbox, Foundry is the specialized workshop. Just think about it that way, inside the toolbox. So, and it is purposely built for what? For AI. Do you get? So if Foundry is, if Azure we said is a global toolbox where you can find kinds of tools that you need and all of that for you to be able to for cloud services and all of that. So we say Foundry is what is a specialized workshop inside of that toolbox that is purposely built for what? AI. So here is how it works. At the Azure level, you create a Foundry resources, right? And this provides the compute power, the storage, the model driven, and all the infrastructure your AI solution will need. we will look at it. And that's why I left the other link for us to get started ahead of time. So you think of it as setting up your own workshop with all your right equipment. Now, inside that resource, you create what is called a foundry project. So we started with a foundry resources, then we go to a foundry project. Now you can see what it is like. A foundry project actually, these are isolated workspaces where you actually build things, right? It is like having separate workbenches for different projects, so nothing gets mixed, right? So within each project, like this, within each foundry project you are creating, you have 4 core elements, and I want you to remember this because they are the building blocks of any AI solution. First, you have what is referred to as the models, right? The models, so you choose from an extensive catalog of AI models, each that is defined from different tasks. Some of them are pre-built, they are templates. Think of models as the brain of your AI. This does not mean that you cannot create your own models yourself. You can create it, but you can actually leverage on predefined models or templates that is in the AI Foundry. Then you have another thing is the second one is the agents. So these are the intelligent coordinators that use those models that you have created for language understanding and reasoning. Do you get? So an agent can figure out what the user needs, decide what to do, and orchestrate the whole process. That's what the agents will do here. So they do what? They feed on your models. They are the ones that does what? They use, they use those models for language understanding and then reasoning. That's what the agent does. Then the third part is the tools. What the tools does is that they connect your agent to the outside world. So if you need your agent to send an email, query a database, or call an API, it is tools that make that happen. Do you get? So tools are the ones that make that happen. Then lastly you have the knowledge. This is how you ground your AI in real data. I remember when I was talking, I said you can decide to say, in terms of grounding, the knowledge base I want you to focus on internal documents, or you can use the web. That we have it with Copilot today. So you can collect data sources to your agents, have the information they need to give you accurate, relevant answer instead of just making things up, because you don't want them to hallucinate. That's why you have the knowledge. So putting it all together, you have a unified platform that takes the complexity out of building an AI solution. You have models for intelligence, agent for orchestration, the tools that is going to give the action, and then the knowledge for the accuracy. That's how it all works, and that is what your Microsoft Foundry is. That is, it is a unified platform of AI apps and agents, and that is why we gave that description, which we are going to see in a minute. Now, so let's talk about your application actually, how your application actually talks to AI, or how applications you are going to build going forward is going to talk to AI. So this is where we say endpoints come in, and I promise you guys, it's simpler than it sounds. People used to think about endpoint. When they hear the word endpoint, they will think about it in a big grammatical language, and then they will say, how is it going to work? So think of an endpoint like a phone number for your AI models. That's the way you should think about it. When your application needs AI to do something like analyze text, generate a response, or classify an image, it calls that phone number. So it calls that endpoint. Do you get? So technically is an HTTP address, but the concept is the same. It's the entry point where your app connects to the AI service. Hello, can you still hear me? Because I got disconnected.
Yes.
Okay, great. I got disconnected again.
Yeah, you're back.
All right. But you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
All right. That's good. So you think of like I said, you think of an endpoint like a phone number that for your AI model, which it calls anytime it needs to generate a response or classify an image just or even analyze a text. Now, the thing is that you wouldn't want anyone calling that number, right? That's the truth about it. You wouldn't just want, because this is like you want it to come and then you want whoever wants to call it should be what authenticated. So that is where authentication comes in. So every request needs to present either an authorization key. That's where you have that authorization key. So you think of your authorization key like your password, or like your Microsoft Entra ID token, which is like you are showing your employee badge. I come to the door before I enter into my company. I scan my badge and then it allows me in. That is what the authorization does. So the actual conversation between your app and the endpoint follows a pattern that is called what? REST. REST is an acronym for we call it REST API. So it's an acronym for sorry, I'm trying to get the full what they call it also. So it's an acronym for representational state transfer. That is what it means. So it's an acronym for representational state transfer. So most time you hear the word REST API, and all of that. So your app sends a request with details about what it wants done. So what that REST API does is that it allows your app to send a request with details about what it wants done, along with some sort of metadata and data in a JSON format. This is what a JSON format looks like, but I don't want to go too very technical with you. Like I said, don't bother about the technical jargons, just understand the concept, which is quite very important. If you can relate to it, it's easier for you to understand it. So the endpoint now does what? It processes it and sends back a response with a result. Do you get? So it's like texting. You send a message, you get a reply. That's what happens. Now, this is where the good news for developers comes in, because I want to believe that even as every one of you are on this call, you're aspiring developers, or even if you develop with just prompt language, you're a developer. I'm telling you today, everybody, the playing ground is now even. Everyone can develop right now, but the only thing we're saying is that people develop responsibly. I don't know how to write a single line of code, to be honest. I mean, I can do well with PowerShell, but if you say me, maybe a little bit of Python, but I'm not so extensive in language and all of that. But the truth about it is that with prompt engineering, I can do very great things today, and in all thanks to the way the artificial intelligence has evolved and make everyone now to do a lot of things. So now here's the good news for developers. You really have to deal with raw REST calls directly. So software developer kits, what we call SDK, that is the software developer kit, wrap all of the complexity into a simple, clean code in whatever programming language that you chooses. So instead of manually constructing this HTTP request, you just called what is called a function. So the SDK handles the heavy work for you. So this is why it is quite very important for you to understand the architecture and how AI application works under the hood, whether it's a chatbot and all of that, or even if it's a document analyzer, intelligent app. This is the concept with which the entry point for models and services is what is the entry point is the endpoints, right? And then every communication you want to make with that endpoint is actually authenticated by an authorization, which you can look at as like a password. That's what this means. And then what endpoint does is that they exposes what REST interfaces that application can use to initiate function. So now, other Microsoft Copilot ecosystem that you need to know, since we've covered Azure AI infrastructure and the Foundry platform, let's look at how Microsoft is putting AI directly into the hands of end users like yourself, like me across the organization. This is where the co-pilot ecosystem comes in, and it's the most important strategic bets Microsoft is making. The key idea is simple. Instead of asking people to learn new AI tools, bring AI into the tools they already use every day. That is the whole idea. There are three co-pilots you need to know, and each targets a completely different persona and then workflow. So let's start on the left with the Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is the one that touches the most people in your organization. You have it embedded into your productivity tools. What I mean by productivity tools are like your Word, your Excel, your PowerPoint, your Outlook, your Teams. Think of it as an AI assistant that sits inside these tools and then helps you to do your entire workflow. In Word, it helps you to draft and rewrite documents. In PowerPoint, it helps you to generate. In fact, would you believe if I tell you that a lot of my slides that I've been showing you so far, a lot of it is a Copilot that help me. I just tell Copilot what I want, and then it makes life very easy for me. And that is what I mean. Gone are the days where you sit and then you say, oh, you need to make a presentation. It's going to take, you have to be preparing for it for weeks. Just know the right prompt to give your Copilot, and it's going to come up with very beautiful stuff for you. And I'm a testimony to it, because a lot of what I've been showing you since, I just back it up with AI and all of that. Of course, not everything, but so a majority of the slides are things that Copilot also assists with, and then it's verified with what we have on AI 900. Do you get? So then you have GitHub Copilot, and then with GitHub Copilot, what you have is the most widely adopted AI coding. If you are in the GitHub class, you appreciate the GitHub Copilot with what was her name? Sarah mentioned. So GitHub Copilot is for developers. It lives inside VS Code, JetBrains, and GitHub.com. It's fundamentally changed how software gets built. The truth about it is that I use GitHub Copilot for my work, and I do not write any single line of code. I just prompts on what to do, and I verify it. That's all. And the real game changer is in 2026. They say is actually in the agents mode, which went generally available in March, where you have the agents mode where you can use agents mode is not just autocomplete, it's an autonomous coding agent. So you describe what you want, it figures out which files to edit, runs terminal command, executes, and iterates on error. That's the beauty about GitHub Copilot right now. And lastly, you have Security Copilot. So if you're attending the security class also, you will appreciate this, because actually part of what they also will maybe be touching, I'm saying maybe, I'm not saying that is it, maybe things around the Security Copilot. So this is purposely built for security operations. So if you're a CISO or a security analyst, this is the Copilot that should have your full attention, really. Where you have Security Copilot is actually embedded across Microsoft security stack. You have it like Defender, Entra ID, Intune, and Purview. So I mean, that is what GitHub Copilot is all about. So hopefully we're going to go into the lab right now. Hopefully our lab would have completed. So I'm going to go into that and then begin immediately. So I think I have like 5 minutes left. If it's not that, I've already gone big. I think the delay was just on that. So while trying Atom, can you see my screen? If yours have already loaded, can you see my screen, please?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that it doesn't. So while that is already loaded, so let's quickly give Atom a bit of exercise for it to do for us. So once it loads, so So we see that Atom is an artificial intelligence and all of that. So one of the things I'm going to ask it is I'm going to give it a sample prompt, and then I'm going to give it a prompt like, what is the relationship? I'm just going to have, what's the relationship between machine learning and artificial intelligence? You can see, you can even ask it a lot of questions. How do I create a new project? Because this is actually going to be your assistant. And the reason why I'm showing you ahead of time is that a lot of the tasks you're going to do in Microsoft Foundry, please keep Atom very, very close by, because if you want to create a project and you get stranded, you can just come to it and ask, or you can even ask him of how to do a project you're going to do yourself. So if I ask this a simple question and the normal prompt that you have, what is the relationship between machine learning and artificial intelligence, is actually going to answer and then give that to me. And then even if so while that is going on, one of the things that you can also use is that you can also use the voice prompt. One will say, oh, how is this different from Copilot? Yes, it's almost the same thing, but the thing is that we're using this also to what they call it, to show how we can chat with a model. This is a already built model that is from the Microsoft Learning GitHub that we can use for this class. My internet is really poor. I don't know if some of you already have answers to it, so you can actually just use this to get a prompt, and then how do I create a project in this? How do I create a project in Foundry? So some of you can do that. Now, why I said we can use that on is actually, for me, my internet is quite very slow. So, but I'm going to go on right now to AI Foundry, which is the next one. Now, for you to start up with an AI Foundry, this is what is going to, how many of us have we signed up for AI Foundry right now? Like I said, the first thing you're going to do is sign up for a free Azure credit. Once you have a free Azure credit, just use, they will not charge you, to be honest. I've given a step-by-step of how to sign up for Azure. Give them they won't charge you. You have an Azure credit. Once you have an Azure credit, you actually have what Microsoft Foundry. So is it that you come to your Azure Foundry, and then you come to say, you look for Foundry, you do a search for Foundry that is on Azure. That you do a search for Foundry, maybe if you're on your Azure or all the services, you can see Microsoft Foundry, which you can see here. Please, guys, help me. I hope you can see my screen. Let me increase it in case it's a big, yeah. So I hope this works. So if you come to, you can see Microsoft Foundry. So I have Microsoft Foundry here, which I can actually load. Or another way for you to just get to your Azure Foundry straight away is just type ai.azure.com. Immediately you type ai.azure.com. If you have already .com, it goes straight into your Microsoft Foundry, and then what it gives you here is what you're going to see here. So this is what it's going to see. So if you go in there, this is what you're going to see. And then now, for you to start building, which is quite very important, you can see that your for Foundry, let's just go around it a bit. You have the new Foundry experience, which you can turn on. You can start building. You can turn on the new experience, and then you have places here. You have latest models that it shows you, which you can create. Remember what we talk about models, where you can select from. This is ChatGPT real-time translate. This is speech translation. This is speech recognition. This is chat completion repose. This is DeepSeek. You can see all of the models that are there, and then you can also build your apps with code templates, and you can explore Azure A services, whatever you want. So if I turn on new Foundry experience right now, it asks me to select or search for a project, and since I do not have a project, I can decide to create a new project. Now if I decide to create a new project, I can give my project any name, but I want to use the advanced option, because the advanced options allows you to select the subscription. So let's assume right now that you sign up for a Azure credit. You will have, like I said, you need a subscription. So you have an Azure tenant, which is a tenant. If you sign up for a new Azure, and then inside that Azure, you have a subscription. So I have this subscription that I want to use, and then the next thing I want to do also is what I can decide to do, what create a new resource group to house, and then also give my foundry what a new name. Do you get a new resource? So but first I want to create a new resource group, and probably maybe call my resource group RG, and call it um AI Foundation. You can call it anything anyway. Foundation dash, you see, foundation track. That's what I want to call it, and I click OK, and then it's going to create that immediately, because I've already, then I'll, my foundry name, the resources I want to give it also, I can decide and call it what AI track or foundation track resources and all of that. So I can give that, it doesn't matter. So what I can do again is that my region, what is my region, which region do I want to use? It's always good for you to keep your region very close, so I can use West Europe, and then I've, it's going to validate all of that, and then I'm going to create. So once I start creating this takes me to it's just going to set it up in a few minutes. That's for you to start, and then I can now start creating whatever I want. So while that is going on, let's switch over to our Atom, whether it has given an answer. So you can see the answer, it gives you an answer of research on the foundational technology. A lot of what we've been talking since about artificial intelligence, and then what it is like. So even ask you, the good part of it, why I'm saying you should use it, is because instead of you going into Microsoft Learn to go and look for a lot of resources for you to learn, it will also help you to take you to the right Microsoft Learning this thing, and then do introduction to machine learning. You can learn a lot of things yourself. How do I create a new project, things you want to, instead, so you can start with that on your own, right? So that is for Atom. Now with that done, I'm just going to so let's go on. So we've created a Microsoft project. Let's see whether that is done. Where is the one? So again, so I just want to show us through again what I've started at. Another thing you can do is this: you can start in code template. So you can get started with AI charts, create and deploy a basic chart application integrated with your data and telemetry. So you have a data using Azure Container Apps, you can actually do this. You can also get started with AI agents. So this, when you open it in GitHub, you can create and deploy a basic agent applications with actions and telemetry inside using what Azure Container. So those are some of the things you can use with the template. I'm already 10 minutes behind time, so I've just taught us today how to create a new project. Where is what I was building? Oh sugar. I've just taught us how to create a new project, and then a new foundry project, and all of that. So because of time, we're going to start next week. This is what it looks like. Welcome to your new foundry, and then you can build agents, and then the model deployment and all of that. Good enough. What we're going to do next, I want us to set up this environment. Our next class is going to show us also, we'll start from it, we'll continue from here, where we can start giving it prompts. In fact, what I would say is that you all can get familiar with the environment and all of that, and then just follow, just like you follow. I have an API key that you need to select the project endpoint. You remember that we talked about the endpoint, what the endpoint does. All of these, copy them and save them in location. So it's quite very important for me that before I go on, because I copy all of these into a location and save it, because I'm going to need it by the time we go on. So that is my API key. Let me see. API key. So do the same also, and then my project endpoint also is important that I keep them. I just keep this information. But most importantly is your API key, and then Azure the endpoint also. Yeah, it's the project. So then, just like you said, you can ask AI anything anytime. You set your eyes, and then you create the agent. So, so this is where you can see, this is like your workbench. You know, when we talked about it, where you have the agents, you have the models, you can fine tune the tools, the knowledge. This is where you carry your knowledge base, the data you want it to. This is where you can add your knowledge base, where you want it to ground and all of that. These are your tools that you want to use. You can even use third-party tools to connect, and then you have the models here that you can create, which you can train ahead of time, or you can use the ones that are already deployed, and then your agents. So we'll continue next week. I'm sure I'm 15 minutes me ahead. I mean, how will I put this? 15 minutes already. So thank you all. Don't forget to sign up for your what they call it. Don't forget to sign up your attendance, and then let me see. Please ensure, because we wouldn't want to waste time next week, please ensure that you've set up your Foundry environment, and then we can start building from there. In fact, the assignment that I know that I've given everyone today is to see how they can sign up for their Azure AI Foundry, and then sign up for their Azure and then be able to query Foundry. Now from there, we'll have our WhatsApp group, which I'm going to communicate with you over the weeks. If you have done that, then I can ask you, I'll give you a task to say, create something simple. And then we all, please do not be afraid. Don't say, oh, now when they start giving me exercise, I will disappear and you will just go MIA. Please don't miss an action in this class. That's the exciting part. You've taken the bold steps to say you want to come for this course, and then the most important thing is that since you've started with this bold step, do not afraid to leave, even when you feel you can't figure it out. The truth about it is that you have a lot of us here who is willing to help you. We will help you, and we will assist you with anything. So ensure that you stay committed to this, and then we'll take it up from there. Any question? All right, I'll give that to you now.
I do have a question.
Yes, I saw the question. Can we get the prompt? So I'm going to give you that. It's not even the prompt alone. I'm going to give you the link. The link is actually available. So I'm going to give you the full link for you to work with. So you will see the link with the exercise for Atom. For the person that asked the question, this is it here. Explore samples that you can do. That's it there. I've sent it to you. Simple AI introduction. So you have the prompt. If you go down, then you can even understand the architecture and all of that. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So ensure you sign up for the attendance also. Yeah, attendance is quite very
One
important.
more question. Where do we sign up, please?
Where is it again? I think it's shared on the chat window. It's there on the chat window. Is it tech? So there's an attendance tracker. This is it over here. Yeah. Hope that helps. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it.
It's in the chat window. I think it's the last chat there, right? Have you seen it?
I'm not
Or do you want me
sure
to
why. I'm not sure why.
but can you
Whenever
see the chat
I was
window?
going
Can
on,
you
like,
see the chat window?
yes, I can see the chat window.
So it's a tech training attendance, but I'm going to copy it again and try to repaste.
Oh, sorry. I have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right then. Thanks everyone for joining this class. So next week we'll continue. Definitely my other mentors that are on the call are going to continue these. I hope you've gotten value. I hope you understand. I hope the concept around AI that is scary or how would I put it, confusing is very clear right now. And then you guys can start your AI journey with confidence, right? So in the chat, I mean the WhatsApp group also will be sharing with you some of the resources um, Microsoft Learn that will want you to focus on. But like I said, if you work very well with Atom, you get started in no time and you'll be very fine. And then during the course of the week, I'll send also an assignment for us to do on Foundry and then see those that have actually taken a step further. And then next week we'll continue from there. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And then let's continue the conversation on WhatsApp. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.